The BMW HP4 Race was fast, but what they built in secret was terrifying. In the shadows of BMW's elite racing division, engineers created something the public was never supposed to ride, a prototype HP4 Race with a supercharged 999cc engine. It was lighter than anything in its class, faster than some MotoGP bikes, and brutally powerful. But it was banned before it ever saw the grid. This wasn't just another spec upgrade, it was a complete engineering rebellion, a bike that broke the rules before it even hit the track. So why was it hidden? Who pulled the plug? And what exactly made this machine so dangerous BMW shelved it before it could race? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the most extreme superbike BMW ever built, and why it may never legally touch asphalt again. What happens when a manufacturer decides to ignore the rulebook, toss aside street legal limitations, and build a motorcycle that's purely designed for one thing: unleashed speed? That's exactly what BMW Motorrad did with the HP4 Race. This wasn't just another superbike, it was a full-blown engineering flex. BMW saying, here's what we can really do when we stop caring about traffic lights and emission tests. But with that freedom comes a problem. It was too good, too light, too fast, too aggressive, and in some racing circles, too illegal. In this video, we're diving deep into the story behind the BMW HP4 Race. This is the story of a bike that didn't just bend the rules, it snapped them in half. Let's rewind to 2017. BMW was no stranger to superbikes. They had the S1000RR, already a favorite among both racers and weekend warriors. But behind the scenes, engineers at BMW Motorrad were working on something more focused, something with zero compromises. That project became the HP4 Race. Now, to be clear, this wasn't a souped-up street bike. The HP4 Race was a limited edition, factory-built race machine. It didn't even pretend to be road legal. BMW built just 750 units globally, and each one was assembled by hand in Berlin. It was more than a motorcycle. It was a collector's piece, a track weapon, and a proof of concept all rolled into one. What set it apart wasn't just how fast it was how it was built. This was the first production motorcycle ever to feature a full carbon fiber frame and carbon fiber wheels as standard. Not carbon fiber trim, an entire frame made from the stuff. That alone cut a ton of weight, but it wasn't just about shaving off grams. It was about building the kind of platform a MotoGP rider would feel at home on. The HP4 Race came kitted out with race spec Olin suspension, Brembo GP4 PR brakes, a full race electronics package with launch control, engine braking control, and a pit lane limiter. This was the kind of bike that didn't just belong at a racetrack, it demanded one. BMW wasn't trying to win over the average sport bike rider. They were speaking directly to track day fanatics and professional racers, and in doing so, they created something that was technically brilliant, yet arguably too wild for its own good. At the heart of the HP4 Race was its crown jewel, the 999cc inline-4 engine. But this wasn't your everyday S1000RR power plant. BMW didn't just tune up the stock engine, they pulled this straight from their World Superbike Racing program. It was the same high-spec engine used in competition, built to perform at the very edge of what's mechanically possible. It delivered a jaw-dropping 215 horsepower at 13,900 RPM and 120 Nm of torque at 10,000 RPM. To put that in perspective, that's more horsepower than most compact cars, stuffed into a machine that weighed less than a Moto3 bike. And thanks to its featherweight construction, every bit of that power felt immediate, violent, and raw. The engineering was ruthless: titanium valves, a Penkel lightweight crankshaft, forged pistons, high compression cylinder heads. Every component was built with racing in mind. Not comfort, not reliability, just performance. But the real magic wasn't just in the raw numbers, it was in how it delivered that power. The engine revved all the way to the hair-raising 14,500 RPM, delivering its surge in a way that felt more like a GP bike than anything remotely street legal. The throttle response was razor sharp, the power band was wide and aggressive, and the entire powertrain was managed by a suite of electronics designed to keep the rider alive at full throttle. The transmission was a 6-speed close-ratio race gearbox with a seamless shift function, no clutch needed once you're rolling. And the electronics? Absolute cutting edge. A full data logging system, customizable traction control, engine braking modes, launch control, and even GPS-assisted lap timing. Every aspect of the engine and the systems around it were built to do one thing: obliterate lap times. And when combined with the ultralight chassis, the HP4 Race became one of the fastest motorcycles ever produced outside of prototype GP machines. But that kind of performance doesn't come without a cost, and in the case of the HP4 Race, the cost wasn't just in dollars. While the HP4 Race was a technological marvel, it was also extremely fragile. The same high compression internals and race-grade components that gave it all that power also gave it one massive weakness: longevity. BMW themselves stated that the engine had a lifespan of roughly 5,000 kilometers, or just over 3,000 miles, before it needed a complete rebuild. Not just a tune-up, a full teardown and replacement of major components. Why? Because the tolerances were so tight and the materials so specialized that the engine essentially aged like a racing kart. It gave you a few glorious sessions before screaming for help. And if you thought that rebuild would be a few $100 at your local shop, think again. A full engine replacement or rebuild was rumored to cost upward of $17,000, not including labor or shipping. That's nearly the price of an entire new litter bike. And that was if you could even find a service center qualified to do it. Then there was the issue of parts. This wasn't a production engine you could just order bits for. Everything was limited run, and BMW was very selective about who they'd supply components to. You couldn't just roll into a dealership and ask for a new camshaft. They'd laugh you out the door. And this all made sense, really. The HP4 Race wasn't made for casual Sunday rides. It was a race bike, designed to be maintained like a race bike, torn down, inspected, rebuilt, and raced again. But for private owners who didn't have a pit crew and a trailer full of spare parts, the reality quickly set in. This bike wasn't just high performance, it was high maintenance. In the end, the very thing that made the HP4 Race so incredible, its no-compromise performance, is also what made it so difficult to own. And that would play a huge part in what came next, why this incredible machine would find itself banned, sidelined, and eventually shelved. So how does a bike that was never even street legal end up getting banned? It all comes down to one word: fairness. The BMW HP4 Race wasn't just fast, it was unfairly fast. It blurred the line between production-based racing machines and full-on prototypes, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way in the racing world. In many amateur and semi-pro racing leagues, rules are built around production models. The idea is to keep the playing field level. Stock frames, factory engines, and components that anyone could reasonably buy off a showroom floor. Even in higher tier classes like Superstock and Superbike, the bikes were still supposed to resemble what a customer could ride, at least on paper. The HP4 Race shattered that illusion. With its carbon fiber frame, race-only engine, MotoGP level electronics, and boutique manufacturing process, it simply didn't belong in the same category as other production bikes. It was a track bike, yes, but one that technically wasn't based on a true road-legal production model. It had no VIN, no license plate, no DOT approval, no emissions compliance, nothing that would allow it to be sold as a traditional street motorcycle. As a result, many race organizers didn't know what to do with it. It didn't fit cleanly into existing classes. In some cases, it was too light to meet minimum weight requirements. In others, its power-to-weight ratio was seen as giving it a massive advantage over bikes that had to obey the limits of homologation rules. And then there was the engine itself, borrowed straight from BMW's World Superbike program. It wasn't detuned, it wasn't watered down, and it wasn't meant to last long. In other words, it wasn't really a customer engine. It was a pro-level competition motor dropped into a limited-run chassis and sold to the public. Race series like FIM-sanctioned events, Superstock 1000, and various national superbike championships began quietly banning or disqualifying the HP4 Race from entering. It wasn't a case of the bike doing something illegal per se, it just didn't fit the spirit of what those racing classes were meant to represent. To put it simply, the HP4 Race was too special. It wasn't designed to compete, it was designed to dominate, and when something is that dominant out of the box, racing regulators tend to push back. Despite its short time in the spotlight, the HP4 Race left a lasting impact on the motorcycle world. For many enthusiasts, it was proof of what was possible when you take off the training wheels and let engineers go wild. It pushed the boundaries of motorcycle design, showing that things like full carbon fiber frames and track-ready electronics didn't have to be reserved for MotoGP prototypes. BMW took tech from the track, brought it to a consumer product, and in doing so, gave riders a rare taste of true race bike purity. Even though it was banned in some competitive formats, the HP4 Race gained near mythical status among collectors and track junkies. With only 750 ever made, it became a white whale, a bike that wasn't just fast, but legendary. It's the kind of machine that shows up in motorcycle museums, private racing collections, and high-end garages, rarely seen but never forgotten. It also forced the industry to reevaluate the boundaries of what a production bike really means. After the HP4 Race, we started seeing other manufacturers inch closer to that no-compromise mentality. Ducati with the Superleggera V4 and Kawasaki with the H2R. But even then, none quite matched the sheer absurdity of what BMW delivered with the HP4 Race. Its engine, though ultimately unsustainable, served its purpose: to prove what could be done with enough engineering talent and zero restrictions. After the HP4 Race, BMW took a step back, not because it failed, but because it succeeded a little too well. They followed up with the M1000RR, a more refined, race-homologated superbike that stayed within the rulebook. It still packed serious power and cutting-edge tech, but this time, it was built with actual competition in mind, not just domination. The M badge signaled a shift. BMW was now focused on bikes that could win races and be part of a longer-term strategy. The HP4 Race was never meant to be sustainable. It was meant to prove a point, and it did, loudly, violently, and without compromise. What came next was BMW figuring out how to bottle that madness into something racers could actually use. But the legend of the HP4 Race, that still roars even when the engine doesn't. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for more motorcycle videos.